Hey, okay, so if you remember, I uh read my first fan fiction. Yeah, I still can't believe that I let that see the light of day. It was so bad. Um, but when I did that series, I said that I would look for the original writing of my book, and that I would wait a while before actually doing a reading of that. And I still don't know how to do where you scroll through real time because technology and me don't mix. I just oh, but so we're gonna do it the same way um that I did before, and which is probably a good thing because apparently 22-year-old me didn't know how to spell things like ocean liner. An athlete. But when I wrote this, it was actually through a long period of time. Uh, Something to understand is that I was officially diagnosed with epilepsy in March of 2004. Okay. Now, the first chapter was posted uh when I found it in my Angel Fire, which I'm surprised that my Angel Fire account still exists. But it was officially, I mean, it was posted April of 2004. The last chapter was posted um, in May of 2005. So a year period I was working on this. And I was going through a lot of testing, MRIs, CAT scans, all that stuff. Oh, gosh, it was terrible. I was fighting depression. I was having a hell of a time. Okay. So actually, this story helped me through that, and I didn't even know that. I mean, I'm sure that there were other stories that I was working on at the time, and just, um, but this story is different from my other ones because, well, we'll get into that because I'm sure that I'm going to be talking up a storm. Now, one thing about it is that I'm sure you're thinking, oh my gosh, 21 chapters. Okay. The chapters aren't very long. They really aren't. Uh, on the mailing list, of course, we would, some people were very descriptive. I'm not. Just remember that. I suck at descriptive writing. Younger me was very bad at it. That's why I rewrote this. And so now the original title is, of course, The Widow. The title was changed. I actually fought that for a while, and then I was like, you know what? It's going through a big old facelift. Change the title. Change is good. Okay, so this is fan fiction, and yes. Um, just right off the bat, I think you'd be surprised how many stories are fan fiction. When it's completely ripped off of the original, then that's a problem, you know. But yeah, I that's when I have a problem with it. But if the person actually takes the time and effort, like I did, to completely change everything around, then yeah. So now the first paragraph starts out strong and then takes a nosedive. Because it starts out, the year was 1912, the world was going through changes as it always did, but the year but this year was the most eventful. And then it just goes into all these different events that nobody cares about. It, and it just keeps going. I mean, and then the next paragraph, I mean, it's like a paragraph this thick, and then like the next paragraph is this big, and it says the story follows the most famous event of that year aboard the famous ocean liner Titanic. See, I also had a problem with 22-year-old me, had a problem with paragraph breaks. I remember one of my teachers, I think it was in high school, said that I mean she was really nice and she was trying to help me out with this and she's like, this is when you break into a new paragraph. I finally figured it out and but yeah, oh gosh. I remember that. I remember in college in my creative writing class, the professor that we had was not very good. And he went on and on and on about commas and he confused everybody. And one of my classmates, the poor guy, he was so confused that it was like every other word had a comma in it. It was hard to read his story. And but yeah, I blame the professor on that one because the guy was not confused before. Yeah, my classmate was not confused before. This guy went on a tangent about commas. And so yeah, it's just your teaching technique. And yeah, felt so bad for him. And fortunately, one of my other classmates actually took him to the library because I remember we had a break where we would get to sit in the library for a while and all that. And our classmate actually sat with him and explained to him. Then he got it. He's like, I just didn't know what to do. I didn't understandable because yeah, he just went off about commas. It was just... So but anyway, yeah, word vomit like crazy on this one. And so we meet our first character. It's his name is Enrique Morales. I actually kept the name in the book. I actually, it's a generic name, but I liked it. And it's Bumlets. He's my favorite newsie. I really like Bumlets, and I've talked about him several times on this channel. And but it's not like all my fan fiction centered around that one news. Yeah, I wrote. There was somebody that I would write fan fiction for, and it seems like she really liked Racetrack. So yeah, I wrote some for Racetrack. I wrote some for Jack. I wrote some for um. I didn't write a lot for Spot, but I know I wrote a couple of stories for Spot. And but anyway, yeah, I wasn't just a one newsy gal. So anyway, we get his backstory, and the backstory basically for him was that he found out that he had a living relative who is actually a rich merchant in Spain, and so he goes over and he turns into a rich guy, and that's how he can be on the Titanic now. And and then he goes on deck, he sees the kids, sees some kids playing, and then somebody talks to him. Turns out that she is the wife and actually widow of his best friend who happens to be Dutchy. And the real name being Peter. I don't know why I chose Peter. I don't I don't know. The thing, even back then, though, I would choose names carefully. Like, uh, Not always. No, I do have to say that on the mailing list, all of us would like in the movie, Jack Kelly has an actual name. He has his real name, his birth name, and but none of the others do. So when we were writing fan fiction, and there came a point where if our story had them with a real name, more often than not, we use their actor names. So like for racetrack, it would be, it's Max. In the case of Bumlets, I can't tell you how many used because the actor's name is Dominic. Yeah, how many used Dominic? Well, and so here you can tell that I was trying to be different. But listen, I gotta be honest. Um, I've got probably about four or five fan fiction stories where with with bumlets where the name is Dominic. Oh, Lordy. Um, and then of course Catherine, she's Irish, and so Catherine, I mean, yeah, she's and I think I think at the time, back 2004, I think with Dutchy, I think I was going with like the a Dutch name. And so I was kind of looking around and seeing where the origin was, and I think that's why I chose Peter because Ian, the son's name in this is known as like a Dutch Irish name. I think that's what I read back then. Yeah. Anyway, um, I could be way off. I don't remember. But don't hurt me. Please don't hurt me. But it just seems like that's because I do remember um there's a point where she has a like a Dutch a book with Dutch fairy tales. I kept that in there, and so yeah, her husband is Dutch. And so see um I'm when I choose names for my characters, I choose them according, especially with something like this, I choose them according to where they're from. With Jackal, oh, it was it was that one was harder. Jackal is and I'll talk about him later, of course, but Jackal, he is my character that's an Egyptian immigrant. And there's a scene in the book where he has to mention his real name. And of course, I was wanting to use a name popular at the time, Egyptian names, Arabic names at that time period. And I was having such a hard time going through, right? Well, what is it? Well, I was able to find where basically um children were named after uh like pharaohs and So like I named him, I think it was Rahotep. I think that was the name that I used. So royalty. They were named after royalty, not so much pharaohs, but just royalty. And well, pharaoh is royalty, I should say. And which I felt because like these days, it's you um the names are like Muhammad and that I was getting a lot of that when I was like, I don't want to name him Muhammad. I don't want to, and I'm I don't mean to offend at all. I mean, I wanted him to have a unique name, and I also wanted the name to fit in the time period that he was in. And I hope that makes sense. Please don't hurt me. And but anyway, yeah, I mean, I didn't think it would be so hard. I really didn't think it would be so hard to give him an actual name. Jackal is, of course, his nickname, but to give him an actual name that would fit the time period that he was in, I was having fits. So again, don't mean to offend at all. I really don't, but I was, oh, good heavens. So yes, I do try really hard to be very respectful to the cultures and everything when I name my characters and everything and to the time period that I name them in. And what was the common name during this time period? And I don't just pluck names here and there. No, whatever. And but I'm pretty sure that when I chose Peter, it's because of uh Dutch origin. I'll check that again and see. Getting back to this. And so anyway, they're talking and this is when Enrique finds out that Peter uh has been murdered, widow. And the person that he's talking to is, of course, his best friend's widow. And so then they continue talking, and um, he is invited to dinner. Now, one thing that is annoying is as they part ways, these feelings start to stir. Again, it's 22-year-old me, but it's still annoying. Uh, because that's not really realistic. Okay. The way that I wrote Catherine is yes, she's an attractive woman and everything, but the attraction shouldn't be that, especially when you just found out that your best friend has died. And and then in this my characters interact with people from the ship. Like right now she's talking to the Strausses. I cut all of that out. Especially when as I was reading this, to see if it was going to spoil anything. As I was reading it, I was realizing it, and it made me so angry, really. As I was reading it, I was realizing that I wrote them in as like matchmakers for Catherine and Enrique. It's like the more that the Strausses talked to Catherine or Enrique, and then even as Molly Brown talked to these two, all they were doing was trying to bring the two together. And it's like, no. So, yeah, that's I'm surprised that nobody called me out on that. Or maybe they tried and I was just being a pain in the ass. I'd believe that one. Oh, because I stood by all my writing. So yeah, I would believe that. And but no, I found that to be very disrespectful. 22-year-old me should not have done that. And yeah, I was I was embarrassed more than anything and angry, like I said. So to read that and be like, I so if anybody on the mailing list called me out on that, I'm sorry that I didn't listen because I should have. That's awful. That's awful to do to the memory of these people. So anyway, yeah, that was very upsetting. So nobody from the uh Titanic is in the book. I took all of that out. I think no, Charles Lightoller, I think is the only one. There is a point where um Catherine is at the lifeboat and the famous point where the Strausses, you see them and the quote, that's it. That is it. Everything I nothing else. Compared to everything else here, yeah, I don't make mention of anybody else. I think there is one reference of Murdoch, First Officer Murdoch, and that is it. People that you would expect to for there to be reference to. Nobody else. So so now we're on chapter two. And this okay, so Ian needed a bath. Um because he was playing on deck and so he got dirty. This was something that I just never really thought of. And I don't know why. I mean, I have a few books on Titanic and of course researching Titanic for as long as I have. This is just something that I guess just went under the radar for me. Um or it could be just one of those things where it's like modern mindset. Uh so on the Titanic, you actually had to ask for a reservation to use the bath, not the Turkish bath, but the actual bath. Now, down in third class, they only had one bathtub for the entire third class. I don't know about second and first class, but if you needed to use the bath, you had to reserve it. So when I have this scene where th- they didn't have bathtubs in their room. And what's funny is that the year before I wrote this in 2003, um, because in July of 2003, I went on a cruise, and of course on the cruise ship you have I have this stray hair. You have a bathroom and everything. You have the shower there and all that. So it's that modern mindset. You just figure everything is there. Well, that's not what it was like in 1912. No. So when I researched for the book and I read that, I was like, how is it that I did not know this before? I should have known that, and I just didn't. So there is no way that she could be that Catherine would be cleaning her son unless she gave him what's known as a sponge bath. I don't know if people even know what sponge baths are anymore. I remember my mom, she would have a basin, one of those, and or she, she would wet down a washcloth and yeah, and fill up um the sink with and have soap and everything, and then just scrub us down, and that was our sponge bath. I mean, that would be the only thing. And so, so then they go to dinner. Actually, they go to meet up Enrique, which was near the first class uh um grand staircase. And this scene just is like it's out of the movie. I think I kept it in the book as well, not really thinking about it, but so Enrique's standing at the top of the stairs, just like Leo DiCaprio did in the tuxedo and everything. Maybe I secretly like it and don't know it. So those of you that are fans of Titanic can get me on that one. I find it funny more than anything. I really do. I mean, I can laugh at it. I mean, I find that hilarious. Oh, especially when I really do believe that it's in the book. I didn't take it out. So anyway, they go to dinner and well, here's the interesting thing about the grand staircase is that the photographer that White Star Line hired, he was actually a nature photographer. Um, which actually Ansel Adams is known for his nature photography, but he did do a lot of industrial photography as well. I have a book on Ansel Adams. But yeah, I think he did like freeways and all that stuff. And yeah, he did some architecture stuff as well. But anyway, um, so this photographer that they hired did a phenomenal job, but I find it interesting that if he photographed the grand staircase for Titanic, where are those pictures? Because I mean, he photographed like everything of the construction of these two ships, and he photographed everything, the interior and the exterior of both ships. But there are just a few things that he did not photograph, or they're very dark. You know, there were a couple of rooms that it says that it's the Titanic, but it's obviously the Olympic because once I was able to actually find the Titanic one is just bad. So it's obvious why they go with the Olympic version. Um, but with the grand staircase, I know that they brought up the Cupid from the site, and I don't keep up with that as much as I used to. I just think that they're bringing up stuff just to bring up stuff, and they shouldn't do that. It's a grave site, so that's my personal opinion on it. And oh, it's research. It's like, as soon as they saw the boots, and it was obvious that somebody had once laid there. That should have been the clue to not be picking at it. To no longer pick at this place. Yeah, you can go around and look and continue to take pictures. That's not going to hurt anything, but to actually physically take, yeah, that's my personal opinion and I can have it. But so they took the Cupid, and from what I understand, the Cupid is different from the Olympic. And and it seems like that's what they said in the documentation for the White Star Line. I could be I did so much research. Look, I had I have three folders of pictures and documents and all this from researching for one book. It's and everything. So, but I just find it interesting that and even the clock is different. That's like honor and glory and all of that. And um so really it's the illustration that they were going by until that, yeah, and all that. If the photographer actually did take pictures and they're not made public, you know, who knows? I wonder why they wouldn't be made public though. I mean, a lot of the other stuff is made public, but White Star Line, which is not White Star Line anymore. It's funny to me that they were swallowed up by Cunard. Oh, anyway, so they're having dinner, everything. Ian is becoming a fan of Enrique, which this is the thing about writing children. It is not easy. Okay. Now I've worked with kids, so it's a little bit easier, but not a lot. Because when you decide to have a child in your story, you got to figure out how that age group acts. The one annoyance that I have is that there are writers out there that want to do the whole thing of using W's. Children don't talk like that. Stop it. Oh, they don't use W's. L's and R's are not replaced with W's. Oh man. I don't know where that came from, but it needs to stop now. For all the years that I worked with kids, I have never known a child to talk like that. And but anyway, when I was writing Ian, a 7-year-old child, you also have to put them into the time period that they were living in. Because especially in the Edwardian era, you think about the kids that lived on the farm. I mean, kids back then basically grew up fast. They didn't really have much of a childhood. And child labor was still going fast, going strong, I should say. And and so I mean, one picture that I remember, because when I was taking history of photography, we were talking about Lewis Hine, and my professor was showing pictures, and one that I remember vividly is this apartment, and it showed a mother with like her 5 kids, and the children were making lace with her. And the caption that our professor had was that they didn't go to school, they had to work with their mom to make the lace to pay rent. And so yeah, kids in and then you also think, well, the aristocratic children had it easy. I don't think so. Look, even in the movie Titanic, I've only seen it twice, but I remember the part where I think Rose is at tea with these women, and she watches this little girl being reprimanded on how to act. The girl's like 6, 7 years old, and how to properly act. And you could just see Rose being it's not enjoyable. I mean, you have to act a certain way, you have to present yourself a certain way because you represent the family. You have to, I mean, it's like you're a pawn in this family line. And and if you don't act a certain way, it's a huge scandal. So yeah, either way, that's why kids ran away all the time, so that they could be free. So writing, when you write a character that is a child, it's not easy. It really isn't because you have to think of the time period that they're in. You have to free yourself from the idea that, oh, it's, modern times and everything. No, what time period do they live in? How did children act during that time? And, I just watched a documentary of children in the medieval period, and I can't, oh, Lordy. Because there's not a lot of documentation of kids in the medieval period because basically they were sent off to the monastery. And you could say, well, what terrible parents, but parents thought that they were doing the right thing for their kid, you know. And but there are a couple of paintings showing children at play, so we do have some document anyway. And so yeah, it's really not, and it's so when I had to write, because reading this, it's like children don't talk that way because Ian's kind of talking like a teenager or young adult. So I tried to make it a little more convincing in this, and and tried to get his personality right and everything. I hope I did a good job. So anyway, dinner's over, and Ian had fallen asleep during dinner, and he's settled into bed. The adults are talking, and uh Catherine starts to cry because, she misses her husband and all that. So now we're in chapter 3. And when Catherine wakes up, Ian is gone. And so she leaves to find him. This scene doesn't make Catherine look good. And I don't know why I put it in because it's like a kind of cat fight. I mean, she looks like a bitch in this scene. There's like one of the first class passengers that makes a comment, and like Catherine just snaps. It it has no relevance to the story, really. I mean, there's no reason for it to be there. So it uh yeah, it's not a good look. So she finds Ian with Enrique, and um I'm noticing something with this. It's like when I don't really want to have Ian contribute to the scene, I just have him leave to go play with these kids. And oh my gosh. But there's like these awkward scenes between Catherine and Enrique, and like I was realizing that they're acting like teenager, oh, like 17-year-old, maybe 20 something, early 20 something. And I'm like, but by this point, if they were teenager, I mean, like if Bumlets were teenager in 1899 and in 1912, wouldn't he be like nearing 30 or in his 30s? I I sat there writing it all out because like when I was uh for the book, I'm just like, okay, I gotta figure this out. They gotta be in their 30s. And I can't have them acting, I can't have the behavior being like this. This is just ridiculous. So yeah, there's just big chunks of this that are taken out. Plus it was just droning, and it was just unnecessary, and I feel sorry for the people on the mailing list that uh actually took the time to read it because again, I'm sure that there were so many people who tried to tell me how bad this was, and I just refused to listen. They were trying to be really nice and tell me, and I just wasn't hearing it. Oh, okay. So, yeah, bunch of word vomit here. It's not necessary. Now, Catherine found Ian with the Strausses having breakfast. So she's sitting and eating breakfast with them, and they said that this part doesn't make any sense because when she was with Enrique, Enrique offered to take Ian for the day, and she said no. And because apparently, there's like this awkward thing between them that doesn't exist. And but then the Strausses offered to take Ian so that she could have some time alone. And she says, okay, after she talks with him about leaving the room without her consent, without her permission. Consent, I don't know where that came from. Without her permission. It, that part didn't. When I was reading it, I was like, wait, you said no to one person and it's whatever. So so now she's reprimanding Ian for leaving. Like I understand her rules. Okay, she just lost her husband, and going on a huge ship like this, well, yeah, makes perfect sense. Don't leave the room without my permission or without me at all. And so for him to leave, he needs to be disciplined. And so he has a fit, and as a 7-year-old would, nobody likes to be. And it's like he says a terrible thing to her, and she just sits there and starts crying. It's like again, this is one of those moments where it starts off strong, and then she just sits. It doesn't make any sense. You're the parent. What is? But I figured it out. See, I like Catherine. Catherine was the first character that I wrote that was a mother. And not only that, she was a single mother, kind of. She was a widow, but she was turned into a single mother due to circumstances. And but the thing is, I did too much at once. And so given that, sh writing her suffered back in 2004. Um, I just she is just like just like that scene with the cat fight. That 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 wasn't necessary. That's not her personality. Plus, she has these damsel in distress moments that I don't appreciate. And, I'm reading through it and I'm just like, and almost like she expects Enrique to solve her problems for her. This guy that she just met has to fix everything. And I keep hitting the keep hitting this, so and I think you saw that earlier. And but so I'm getting tired of this. But and and she didn't have much of a backstory in this. She had kind of one, but she wasn't given much. In the 2014 version, she was fleshed out a little bit more, but not a lot. I mean, it was just like I really like Catherine, not like Katrina. I mean, Katrina is just one that we don't want to talk about. And- but Catherine, it was obvious that when I was writing, it was one of those where she does love her child. She would do anything for her child. She obviously loved her husband and everything, but it was just I didn't know how to write this character back in 2004. Well, guess what? That was all fixed. She is 1,000 times better in the book. Um, just like a lot of other characters. Enrique was fixed because Enrique was extremely naive in this story. And he's still kind of naive. I kind of liked the naive personality, but not to the extent as you see in this. I don't have a problem with characters being naive, but not to the point where it's just uh yeah, where it's like you're a complete airhead. And no, no, uh no. Um but yeah, all of my characters went through a uh massive change. And but Catherine was one that I've always liked because of the fact that she was the first character that was a mother and had had become a single mother. And I was like, but what's with the damsel in distress thing? This is driving me bananas. It's but but anyway, yeah, so Catherine is one of my favorite because of all that. And but she's fixed now. In this, she's not so great. So anyway, um, so Ian has said a terrible thing. She's sitting there crying. He leaves the room to meet the Strausses, and guess who shows up? It's Enrique. Yeah, he pops up out of nowhere. He's so he now we're on chapter 4, and he goes into the room to investigate and see how Catherine is doing. And he and Catherine get in kind of a I mean, this is so awkward. This is one of those again where it's like they're like in a teenager phase. And I don't enjoy it. It's so cringy. That's the word I've been looking for this whole time. It makes you cringe inside and out. And so I'll do the cringing for you because this is just And so basically she tells him what happened with Ian, which I would think he would be more upset because of the fact that his offer was rejected, but he's going off to see the Strausses, which was the same offer. Be like, what what the hell, woman? Whatever. Nah, Enrique's a nice guy. Oh, so and she's doing this thing that's going back and forth where he says, well, she's like, um, I just don't know why he's acting like this. I don't understand. I don't know. And so then he offers to talk to Ian, and she says, "No, no, I have to take care of this." It's like, what do you want? What is what is your problem? Oh, this scene is so annoying. So then she kicks him out because seriously, this is like the total massive cringe fest because it's like he practically proposes to her. I don't get it. I don't understand what just happened, but it's like he does. He practically proposes to her. And so she kicks him out for good reason. I would have done the same thing. I would have slapped him in the face, but it's like, excuse you. And then Molly Brown shows up. Now, Enrique is pretty upset. And, he's thinking, why did I mess up? Well, because you're thinking with the wrong head, dude. And, and it's like it immediately goes into again, this is not how they should be portrayed, but it's like it's this whole thing of matchmaker mode. So yeah, I'm upset with 22-year-old me for doing this, and that's disgraceful. And so Ian's walking around, meets up, and okay, this is just word vomit at this point. More word vomit, and now we're on chapter 5. Um, pretty much what just happened was they decided to set up a dinner, like an apology dinner. So now Catherine is getting ready for this dinner. And uh so okay, I didn't notice this when I for the 2014 when I released the story in 2014 and everything. But boy, did I ever re notice it for when I was fixing it up for this one. So Catherine is supposed to be in mourning, yet anytime it talks about the clothing that she's wearing bright colors. She's supposed to be wearing black. I went down such a rabbit hole. Oh my gosh. Yeah. Um, it started off in the Edwardian era, and then it just took me all the way back to the Victorian era when it comes to mourning rituals. Um, and now I had to really step back and realize that, of course, in the Victorian era, there was the war that was going on, and like a Civil War and all of that here in America, anyway. And so, but just the amount of time that somebody would go into mourning, and especially if you were related to, like, if you were the wife of um, military, so and just the ranking. So I read somewhere that if your husband was of high, like a general, you had to mourn for 3 years. You had to wear black for 3 years. There was also certain material that you had to wear. And it just, I don't know that I could do that, says the person that wears black all the time. When you're forced to do it, it's not fun. Say, that's the difference. But but again, this was what they did. It was showing respect to their loved ones. Of course, they also had an obsession with death back then. We have an obsession with death now. I don't know why we say such terrible things about the Victorian when they're like, oh my gosh, they stand there, and all these things and all that. And, taking all those postmortem pictures and everything. And it's like, uh, what about your obsessions with death? I see you. But yeah, by the Edwardian era, the uh the rules were slacked off a lot by a by a lot. Uh, so like with Catherine, because this is in April, and it was like her husband had died a month earlier, like in March, February or March. I can't remember exactly when I had it happen, but so it would be like less than a year that she had to wear black. And but they still had requirements for the materials that you had to wear, the certain dress materials and everything. Your dress had to be constructed of certain material. I don't understand why though. I guess there was a significance to it, and they had their reasons. And and so yeah, I fell down a massive rabbit hole on that one. And simply because I uh had talked about the color of her dress, and I'm like, wait, she's in mourning. That needs to be changed. But yeah, I find it funny that we're like, oh my gosh, their obsession with death is weird, and it's like, really? Okay. So she's getting ready for this dinner. She goes to this dinner, and I don't understand why Molly Brown is there. I don't understand. I understand Enrique being there because she roped him into this whole thing. because Catherine did. And but Molly doesn't need to be there. And so let's see. Yeah, this is tons of word vomit and everything. Now, it did mention her backstory, a little bit of a backstory for Catherine, and which was irrelevant. And yeah, which again, I don't remember her giving her backstory on this. But the reason that I say it's irrelevant is because where it was presented, it didn't need to be presented. Like, who cares? And so anyway, now Enrique and Catherine are walking around the deck. They had dinner. Ian's with Molly, and I don't know. So they're walking around, and they do some talking, and then all of a sudden, Enrique kisses her. I took that out of the book because, again, they're supposed to be in their 30s and not acting like this. I don't know what 22-year-old me was thinking. And I don't know. I think 22-year-old me was like one of those that was desperate for romance or something. And because I remember uh, I think that's what it was. I'm pretty sure that's what it was because after I was um diagnosed with epilepsy, I really had the idea that I was like some kind of freak and nobody would have any interest in dating me or anything like that. So I'm pretty sure that that's why I was writing stuff like this. You know, so yeah, I would have no doubt now that I think about it that that's what it was. And after being officially diagnosed and so but still, I mean, yeah. So this part is not in the book. But I will give a little bit of a spoiler from the book. In case you're wondering. Because, you know, with Enrique being as naive as he is, um, I decided to have him be, he's an attractive guy, naive, and he's he's around this attractive woman. So what does he do? He confesses that he's attracted to her. And so that's what happened instead. And so yeah. So now we're on chapter 7 and oh, I guess we missed chapter 6. Well, I guess that was chapter 6. And but yeah, 'cause you know, that was one thing that I was like, how am I going to fix this? How am I going to work this around and figure out what to do with this? And so, I have this character that's naive. He's a good-looking, charming young man. And so why don't I just have it where the night before the tragedy, he confesses that he's strongly attracted to this attractive woman that happens to be the widow of his best friend. And at one point he was, I don't really understand why this is happening, but it is. And so that's what I did. And because, to be honest, that seems more realistic. I've known people that do that, that have to deal with that. In fact, one of my close friends has, because we tell each other everything. We've known each other for so long, we tell each other everything. And he's told me about times where he's um he's met people, and be it a coworker or something, he has dated coworkers and known him for a year or 2 years before that happens. He's it's not like right off the bat. But yeah, he's talked about how he's he's had that struggle. It's like he doesn't want to he told me one time, this has been about 4 years ago, and he says, there's this gal at work and I can't be around her. And I said, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, I can't be around her. And I said, is it really that bad? And he's like, yes, she's that attractive. I was like, you may have to find a new place to work and or ask for a schedule change if it's that bad, buddy. Oh man. So yeah, it's it's I can see that happening. So anyway, chapter 7. He's gonna hate me for saying that, but let him hate me. I don't care. Oh, okay. So we are on Sunday morning. Okay, this is the morning of the tragedy. And I really hated that there was so little writing for this. There's more in the book. So, but anyway, so they're getting ready for church, and let's see. Bunch of word vomit, getting ready for How is this how many remember the whole idiotic church service in the last one with Katrina? It was so damn stupid. It made no sense. Like it was so I read it over again I um after I did the video. I read it over again and I'm like, this still makes absolutely no sense. What is happening? What is going on? Oh my gosh. And that's why it won't see the light of day ever again. Oh, don't do drugs, kids. Oh, Lordy. All right. Okay, so then they go to lunch and they're just talking. And now we're at chapter 8. And Catherine and Enrique are walking around. And this is where the important questions start to come up. but they're like glossed over. So Enrique is asking Catherine, um, so what are you going to do now that Peter is gone? Like, what is your income going to be? And it never talks about what Peter does. Like, I was noticing that. So I read the 2014 version, and it never really establishes what Peter does. And so again, with the descriptive writing, it would be nice to know what Peter does. I mean, um, oh, and the other thing, because I'm noticing one of the things that he says. The other thing about Enrique, of course, he was a newsboy, the fan fiction for Newsies, is he goes back and forth with his New York accent and into a regular, yeah. It's like, make up your mind. How does he talk? Oh, Lord. So, so yeah, that's an important question. And it's just, and it's like to not talk about it, all of a sudden Catherine just starts crying. Okay, we're not going to talk about this. We're not going to go into detail about this. I mean, do you have family that you can live with? We know Peter doesn't because he lived on the streets. So, uh, so then this is when she brings up her association with Spot Conlon. And I can't believe I did this. So I gave him a name, which I'm not even going to bring up because it's so damn stupid. So I gave him another name, which just complicates things. So he goes by his last name, Conlon, which a lot of people went by just one name. It happened a lot. And but then so he drops his first name, goes by Conlon, and then you all of a sudden make things more complicated by giving him this other name. Why? 22-year-old me really just okay, so sure they explain that, but they won't explain the finances side of it. What did Peter do for a living? Did Catherine work? How was she able to afford a first class ticket on the Titanic? Uh, okay, so Ian has been staying with uh Molly. All right, and then at some point when they get to her cabin, at Catherine's cabin, she runs off for some reason, and then Enrique and Ian are talking, and Ian starts talking about Spot, and he brings up, oh, it says, so I guess he works at okay, so Enrique asked, did Conlon get along with Peter? Yeah, except he got mad when Dad didn't get him a job at the newspaper place. So he worked at the newspaper place? Because that's vague. That doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean he actually worked there. Oh, this is again with the lack of descriptive writing. It's so irritating. Oh, and through all of this, Ian is also trying to push, which this is a little more realistic because Ian has latched on to Enrique. Okay, because Enrique is friends with his best friends with his late father. So in a 7-year old's mind, his, Enrique and Catherine should get married. Doesn't understand anything else. And that's realistic. That makes sense. But all the other, I can't believe that. So now we're on chapter 9. Uh, okay, it says it was a clear night. The stars were shining brightly and could be seen twinkling. Um, so for Christmas, I ended up getting, I don't know why I worded it like that. I received, that's what I should have said. I received the Lawrence Beasley's account of the Titanic tragedy. In fact, it's called The Loss of the SS Titanic. And I mean, I'm not finished with it yet. I think they are still on the Carpathia. And but one thing that he said, after watching so many documentaries and everything, but there was one in particular where they were talking because some documentaries are like trying to redeem the Californian. No, the Californian fucked up. Okay. I'm sorry, but there's no redeeming the Californian. And especially after reading this book, even though I'm not finished with it, reading Lawrence's account, I'm sorry, but they done screwed up big time. Okay, now there have been other times where you go back in history and you look over all the evidence and everything, and yeah, person didn't do it or whatever. You can redeem them, but when it comes to the Californian, no, there's no redeeming them at all. I'm sorry. Um, but one of the things that he said was that the stars were bright, extremely bright. In the um in the documentaries, they were like going back and forth. They were like saying that there were no stars, the stars were uh hard to see and everything. Lawrence says that they were extremely bright. In fact, they were so bright that they thought that other ships were coming. And he said that other um, passengers said the same thing, that they were so bright. It was like there were several metaphors that he used when he was talking about it, but like he described it as other ship lights. And he also said that it was like the photographer flashes and the flash pots, and just so to say that the stars weren't out, I don't believe that. I had always heard that the stars were out that night, and so yeah. So when I read that, it just reminded me of Lawrence and his account, which I highly recommend his book. If you've never read it, there were things in his account that I had never heard before. Like he at one point talks about being on deck, and it was the moment when the SS New York nearly collides with Titanic, And he said that there was someone with a video camera who recorded that. And he said that that person had been going around the Titanic the entire time, just recording different things. And I'm just like, oh my gosh, could you imagine the stuff that if Titanic had been able to come into New York and what that videographer or whatever uh, you want to call it, that documentation lost forever. Oh my gosh. That would have been amazing. That would have been absolutely amazing. But because I never heard of that before until I read the his account of somebody with a video camera running around all over the ship. I mean, I knew of what's his name, the priest who took all those pictures and took the last known picture of Captain Smith. I mean, I did a paper on him in college, but yeah. So anyway, Enrique's sitting on the deck and he's in deep thought. He's thinking of, Spot Coleman and everything. This is where his naivety comes in. I think that's the right word. And he's kind of going over what Ian's a 7-year-old boy and and everything. So yeah, his mind is working all kinds of weird things and all this and yeah, and then he feels a light jolt under his feet that made him stop. He waited for it to happen again, then shrugged and walked into his cabin. Okay, so later on, now when I did research for my book, it turns out that my time on this was wrong. And I thought I had the time right, and it turns out I didn't. Well, I like quadruple checked to make sure my time was correct on that one. And I just I bent over backwards several times over to make sure that all the information was correct. There's probably a few things that aren't, and but I did try. Give me some credit. Like I said, I have several folders with all kinds of documentation and photos and everything. And I use the photos just to help with the descriptive writing of the different rooms and everything. And it's just like, oh my gosh. Okay, so now uh Enrique's being awakened and he has to put the life belt on. So he goes to wake up Catherine and Ian. And Ian sleeps through the entire thing. I kept that in the book. I didn't want to I already had to deal with two characters. Okay. And I didn't want to deal with the idea of them losing Ian. Okay. So Enrique carries Ian the entire time. And I just, I didn't want to deal with it, So, so they go up on deck. Now she's fighting the idea. She's like, but this is the unsinkable ship. We don't have to go. I don't know what you're talking about and everything. And he gets forceful with her and makes her get the life belts and basically says, get anything that is reminds you of Peter. That's it. You know. So now at one point she is given a seat in a lifeboat and she doesn't go on. And Enrique gets upset with her, but then she's given another chance and he basically forces her into the lifeboat. And Enrique, on the other hand, has basically accepted that he will die that night, but he's given a spot in the lifeboat and is basically like, here you go. You take charge. So in chapter 10, and that was the thing, is like it's like 3 pages, 3 or 4 pages. And I'm I worked really hard on this scene. And surprisingly, I used the Titanic soundtrack. I use motivational music for all my whenever I'm writing, and usually I use music that fits with whatever it is I'm working on. And so like when I go to work on re-editing the 1930s adventure story, it's going to be 1930s jazz or whatever. Yeah. And I'll probably use the Mummy soundtracks. Yeah, that should work. And so I was using Titanic. I mean, I love James Horner, so I was able to find where someone had uploaded a playlist where it didn't have My Heart Will Go On, thank goodness, because my ears bleed whenever I hear it. Celine Dion has a beautiful voice, but again, the radio's overkilled on that stupid song. I just can't take it. I really can't. I can't do it. I just can't. And I love her other music. I really do. So it's just that one song. It's anyway. So yeah, I was using the instrumental music for Titanic and again, fan of James Horner and listening to that and working my way through writing as descriptive as possible for this scene. And the whole thing about it was, okay, I don't want to overkill on the description, but I have to put in emotion. I have to put in this was happening, that was happening, how these two characters were feel, how everything. And there were times I had to step away. There was at one point where I was getting frustrated and I stepped away for about 3 days before I came back. And so it was not an easy thing to write. Not an easy scene to write at all. But I was once I finished, and the two characters are in the lifeboat is lowered and they move away. Um I read it and I was like, okay. Now the only thing that I forgot was I believe uh the band playing and I was like, damn, how could I forget that? So yeah, I think that's the only thing that I forgot. And I think I mentioned it and then I forgot to continue mentioning it, every so often. But I think that's the only thing. And then of course I had to uh go into the actual sinking, which as you'll see is not uh so yeah, here's a bunch of word vomit and I had to do tons of research for when because of I watched a bunch of documentaries. I read a bunch of accounts. I listened to a bunch of accounts and survivor accounts and everything. It was just because like here it says suddenly everything went dark. Every light in Titanic went out, causing more panic on the ship. Screams were heard miles away. People in the lifeboats listened in silence, wishing they could uh, help, but knew they couldn't. And then it just says here, Catherine gasped as Titanic suddenly broke in two. Half the ship still visible above water. The passengers who were unable to get on a lifeboat scrambled for safety as the remaining half slowly moved perpendicular to the water. Then it slowly made its final plunge into the Atlantic. That was it. That was all I said. And it's like, eh, really? Just that little bit was all that was said about this massive ship, this unsinkable ship. And so, yeah, just like with them getting into trying to escape this sinking ship, I took the time to actually, uh, because I wasn't just gonna sit there and be like, oh, um, I believe it went from being like three to 5 pages in the actual book, which I think it's the same here, to like 20 to 25 pages. So give or take. And yeah, and then it just gets sappy. And now we're in chapter 11, and it talks about how morning broke out. And again, this was at a point where, I mean, they're out in the Atlantic. It's freezing cold. A lot of them are, um, I mean, it's freezing temperatures and they're losing feeling that they're starting to go into hypothermia as they wait. I mean, there were accounts of how when the Carpathia came and they lowered the rope ladder, they couldn't grip that ladder because of how frozen their hands were. None of that. Nothing of that. So, I mean, uh, so yeah, Carpathia, and I cannot believe that on the 2014 book I spelled Carpathia wrong. Throughout the entire book, I spelled it wrong. Nobody said anything to me. I was just like, what the hell? Okay, so they're on the Carpathia, and at this point, Enrique notices this little girl. She's 2 in this one. I changed her age in the book. I decided to keep this character. It's her name is Heather, and I gave her an actual backstory. And this one she has zero backstory and or yeah, it's just and you know, I went back and forth as to if I should keep this character. And I got to thinking about it and I'm like, this is something that probably happened and we've never heard about it. Here's a child that lost both parents, and who's to say that somebody on the ship just decided to take them in? We never heard about that. So I decided to go ahead and keep the character. And and plus it gave kind of a struggle between Enrique and Catherine. Okay, so here it says Officer Murdoch is talking with Catherine. Okay, I know that Officer Murdoch did not survive. Okay, I know. And there were people that when I posted this on the mailing list, there were people that were contacting me about it. Now, of course, this was like 2 years after the 90th anniversary of the sinking. And I just remember people were like, Officer Murdoch passed away. He did not survive. I was like, I know, I meant to say Lightoller. There's nothing I can do about it. And then I meant to fix it when I put it up in Angel Fire. That didn't happen. And I kept meaning to fix it. And I never did, obviously. And well, it was fixed. So the right person is in the book. So and I feel bad. People were telling me, and I kept saying, I know. And okay, so now we're on chapter 12. When did we go into, where was chapter 11? Okay, well, anyway. So we're getting closer to we're like almost done. A little over halfway. Oh, so Mrs. Brown and Catherine are talking, and th this was again, this is another point where Molly brings up how what's your income? So this has happened twice now, and it's like Catherine just brushes it off. She does something like she starts crying, or she doesn't want to talk about it, or she and so Molly actually goes to Enrique and says, "I'm really worried about her." It's like she just does not want to acknowledge a serious thing. And then it's like Enrique just gets super defensive about it. And and then all of a sudden he changes the subject about his friend's murder. That why does Molly need to know that? Why does I mean she might know it, she might know about it and everything, but considering that it happened a month earlier, but then he like starts talking about Spot and how he might be this is so frustrating. Okay. So yeah, he's gonna turn detective. He's determined to find out who killed his best friend. Yeah. Okay, chapter 13. So Carpathia is coming into Pier 54. And a lot of the stuff that I mentioned in these in this first paragraph anyway, I got from a book that I have. And and which is a good book. I think it's the Illustrated Titanic, and oh my gosh. Yeah, in fact, the guy that wrote it was on a couple of the documentaries that I looked at. The documentaries are like from when I was in high school, so back when the History Channel was good. Oh, I said it. Yeah, and so Spot Conlon is waiting, and he's being all terrifying and everything. As only Spot can be. And being all scary. And and of course he does not like seeing Enrique, but he doesn't recognize Enrique. So then he asks who this person is, and Enrique introduces himself, and it's awkward. I mean, you would expect it to be awkward because they haven't seen each other in years. And but then they leave, he takes her back to Brooklyn and everything, and then he meets up with this photographer who happens to be the newsboy Mush. And as it turns out, Mush goes by the name Joel Myers, which I kept that name. I kept it in the book. I liked that name. I said, why not? And I thought that I just made him a photographer, but it says here that he's in the reporter business. So I guess he was a journalist as well as a photographer. I did not know that. I thought he was just a okay. Um, Interesting. Well, then Joel offers to give him a place to stay, him and Heather, because he also has this little girl. They're in the pouring rain, and so and after putting Heather to bed, because Joel has a extra room, puts Heather to bed, and that's when Enrique starts talking about Peter's murder. And he's like, well, did you cover that story? And Joel says, yeah, I did quite a few. And then he finds out that the cops gave up on the story. But it doesn't say when, because I should have said that. Because it's only been a month. So, I don't know. Um, and then it's like all of a sudden Enrique's like, yeah, I think Cumlin had a hand in it, and I think he had something to do with it. And right here, it says, unable to believe what his friend just said. Spot Conlon was capable of many things, but murder was not one of them, especially the murder of a fellow newsie. He stood, yeah. Again, it's one of those things where the naive personality is off the charts for Enrique in this story. I kept it, but toned it down a lot because it seemed to fit the character. And But yeah, it's not, again, using the word cringe. Doesn't make you wanna, oh. Okay. And surprisingly, Joel, he doesn't seem like it, but he can be the voice of reason. Joel is laid back. He can be the comic relief. Uh, if I had to uh use another character from anything, he's like Shaggy from from Scooby-Doo. Pretty much. I mean, he really is. I mean, because there are times, I mean, you watch Scooby-Doo, and there are times where Shaggy is the voice of reason. It's like, be it the cartoon or even the movie. And so yeah, I would describe Joel as Shaggy. It's- So now we're on 14, and I really had to work on the calendar on this one because I didn't think that it was correct in this, and it's not. It isn't that. But oh man, my eyes, everything was just there were times that I had to take like several days and just step away and just no more Titanic, please. Just no more. Okay, so they're looking at all the pictures that Joel took of the murder scene and everything, and the articles, and which they look at more pictures than they do of articles. If he wrote all these articles, why aren't they looking at the articles too? I noticed that when I wrote this, you would think that they would also look at the articles and at any inconsistencies. Yeah, when the story shifts into looking at Peter's murder, there's so many inconsistencies and it pisses me off. Like, oh, yes, I grew up on Perry Mason. I grew up on Matlock. Yes, I watch Matlock and I'm I'm fine with that. But I also read a lot of Sherlock Holmes and a lot of these others. Um, and the fact that I couldn't write a solid mystery is, I'm like, what is the oh, makes me want to just hurt something. Anyway, so and just alone, just the fact that the cops just were like, "Oh, you know what? Let's just drop it. The widow isn't here, we'll just drop it. It's not important to us." I mean, it doesn't explain, were they paid off to not look through this? It doesn't explain that. I mean, like, that's why there's a court scene in this book. Oh man. Yes. Oh, learning how a courtroom worked in Edwardian era, that's another rabbit hole. Oh my. Um, yeah. So because how court worked back then is nothing like it is now. So I had to deal with that and just yeah, fun times. Okay. So Oh, so he is looking at an article. I guess, anyway, but you see more of them actually looking at pictures than you do of them actually uh looking at I would think that the articles would have something. If he's a journalist, he would have actually see, I'm annoyed. I'm so annoyed. Anyway, so he makes a good point here, Enrique. He says, um, how can you murder someone in broad daylight and nobody see it? Yeah. Uh, so then they talk about David Jacobs is is a detective now, and so they talk about, well, should we contact him? Enrique says no, that's too many people on the, let's talk to the cops here first, and then again, like I said, Joel is like, you've been through so much in the past week. I mean, you witnessed the sinking of the Titanic, and now you're trying to fix something that happened over a month ago. You also became a father overnight. You can't ignore that. And yeah. I mean, let's be honest. If somebody we loved and adored was murdered, of course we would want the answers and everything. But this is unrealistic, really. I mean, a 7-year-old boy tells you something and you just, yeah, you just kind of go on that. I don't know. Anyway, so now it's pretty much word vomit. There is another character that's brought in. It's Joel's neighbor. She is like a mother figure in the apartment building. Her name is Mrs. Robinson. I know I give her a first name, but I don't remember what it is. And she pretty much takes care of everybody in the apartment building. And of course, in this version, I don't describe her at all. Just that she has silver hair and she's old. And I kept her in here. I think I changed her first name too. And that's pretty much it. Joel basically tells uh Enrique that he needs to take an he's like, get some sleep. You need it, and we'll call this is an inconsistency as well. Uh I mean, this is inaccurate. He says that he'll call David. David is uh set up his practice in New Orleans. Well, it turns out that long distance didn't work that way back in Edwardian. Again, modern mindset, the way it works. There was a line that was from New York to Chicago, but I don't think that uh I think New York to yeah, New York to New Orleans is a lot longer, so yeah. Now it's scene change to uh in Brooklyn with Spot and Catherine. Catherine is arguing with Spot. Turns out that Spot offered to pay for the funeral and everything. And yeah, he just keeps snapping at her. Uh, he's making her very uncomfortable. And she finally leaves the room. They were in the dining room, and she leaves the room to go and see her son, which he got sick from being in the cold air. And again, doesn't explain what the house looks like. And I did a lot of research on what houses look like, mansions and everything look like in the Edwardian era. Nowadays it's like mansions look like shopping malls, which is ridiculous in my opinion. Why do you need a house that big it- why? Why? And to be honest, mansions in the Victorian and Edwardian era weren't that big. They really weren't. I mean, if when you look at the mansions from back then, it's they were more uh I don't know the word to explain it, but anyway, so now they're going to try and look for Enrique so that he knows about the funeral, which is going to be the next day. And so Catherine's leaving. And we're at chapter 15. Oh, yeah, she ran into Enrique. She left uh the she left the mansion, walked across the Brooklyn Bridge, and ran into Enrique. So now they went off they went out to lunch, which makes no sense because she just had breakfast. What? Okay, so now we're in chapter 15. She's in this diner and yeah, she was just sitting at breakfast arguing with the Spot and that's funny. I wonder how many caught that. It was like, wow, timeline is way off. Oh man. And another inaccuracy is like, I don't understand why they did this. The Edwardians would change their outfits for every little thing. It's like, well, I'm gonna go to afternoon tea, so I gotta change my outfit. I'm gonna go out to lunch, so I'm gonna change my outfit. I'm gonna do this, so I gotta change my outfit. Why would you do that? I'm gonna go to the opera, so I'm gonna change my outfit. I would explode having to change my outfit that much. Oh, good Lord. Of course, there are people that have like 80 pairs of shoes. I, I have a cousin who she did at one time anyway. She had all these pairs of shoes. And I think she was asked, why? What's the point? Yeah, I don't know. And I have two. I think I have three actually. I don't even know how many pairs of shoes I have. Anyway, I guess whatever makes you happy, right? So yeah, she's sitting in the diner. Enrique actually left because he had to send a telegram to his uncle to make sure his uncle in Spain knew that he was okay and or telegram, whatever it was. And he was alive and all that. So then he comes back and this exchange is just as awkward as hell. It's like he's trying to ask her how uh Ian is doing, and it's like she thinks that he's interrogating to find out about Spot, and it's like that's not what he's doing. So then she changes the subject and asks about Heather, and he just keeps it's so weird. So then she says, "Well, why don't you come and see see Ian for yourself?" And it's like he's uncomfortable with that because he really doesn't want to come in contact with Spot because of the fact that he thinks that Spot has something to do with Peter's death. He's still on that. And but he goes ahead and he comes in and and of course Spot when they come in, Spot is glaring daggers at her because he's still butthurt over their argument from earlier, which was probably only like half an hour ago. Given the time frame that I've given this, that 22-year-old me gave this. And oh gosh. And so he's mad, and then all of a sudden he sees that there's an audio. He sees Enrique, and then it's like he's fine. He's like, "Oh yeah, I remember you. And we're all good now." And and then it says something to the effect that he stormed into his library and picked up his phone, dialing the number of his most trusted man. Spot knew he had to get rid of Enrique. He was in the way of his plans with Catherine. It's vague. Vagueness. I hate the vagueness. Okay, and then this is at the point where it just keeps talking about the pictures, but it doesn't talk about any of the articles. How come the article, if he's a journalist, yeah, he has articles, so wouldn't the articles give something away? Hello. Oh man. So, uh, talks about there's a picture showing the angle of the shot where the assailant could have possibly been standing. Yeah, so there's like pictures that show stuff happening at the murder site, and they realized that the body had been moved, and so that wasn't the actual crime scene, and all this, and bunch of word vomit. They decided to take these pictures to the police. And chapter 16. And this is the funeral. So they go to the funeral. This this was the dumbest funeral scene I have ever read in all my life. So it was an outdoor funeral scene here. It's outdoor funeral scene, and it's like, okay, so you're supposed to be this big shot millionaire. Spot Conlon is now, according to the story. And they have this funeral outside, and they just kind of drop this guy in the ground. And I mean, it was just everything about this doesn't make any sense. Oh my gosh. And so Jackal shows up. Yeah, it talks about a few of the other uh characters from Newsies, like Denton shows up. But I mean, was he supposed to talk about the funeral? Was he supposed to write an article about it? What's going on? Or was he just there because? Um, so it mentions Jackal, but it's like I don't remember mentioning Jackal before. Maybe I mentioned it in word vomit earlier. So Jackal, I think I mentioned this before, but Jackal is my favorite. Yeah, okay. On the mailing list, we all come up with original characters, and there's always that favorite that we have. Well, Jackal is my favorite, and I mean, so Jackal is in fan fiction, he is considered, well, he is the right-hand man of Spot Conlon. He is an Egyptian immigrant. He's a fighter. He's a tough guy. And but I don't really there's like only one story I have where I actually kind of mention his look. And in this book, I I fleshed out, I mean, times a thousand, his personality and his how, his physical traits and everything. And so he got uh, he got a much deserved, I guess you would call facelift. But well, like I said, the name, finding an actual name for him was hard because uh for all the reasons that I said earlier, I'm not going to repeat. Um, but I don't. One thing about Jackal is with his physical traits is like he has golden eyes. He has these golden eyes and he has thick eyelashes, so it looks like he has eyeliner around his eyes, much like what you see on the murals um, and everything. So, I mean, he's when I was working on constructing this character, I mean, just I wanted him to fit his culture and so I hope I did him justice. And the thing is yeah, he's Spot's right-hand man, but he's the only one that can actually take down Spot. And he one thing about well, like in the book, I have Connor, and he tells off Connor. He just he just it's like Connor's being a butthole, and he tells Connor, if you do, you're an idiot. You're doing this thing, and you're being a dumbass. He's the only one that can get away with doing that, and that's something that circulates throughout the book is that he is the only one that can get away with that because of Connor's temper and because of Connor's personality and where he stands in society. So nobody else can do that. So, but Jackal is also he's not he also has morals because like when it comes to Catherine and her uh what she's going through, he's protective. So in the case of that book. I would like to use Jackal in other stories as well. And I've had people contact me and say that they absolutely love Jackal. Well, I do too. He's he's my favorite. He's my absolute favorite. And so far he's my absolute favorite character. And um I have always loved Jackal. And so anyway, yeah, so the funeral is going, and in the back, uh, Enrique is talking to Molly again about uh, this whole thing with Peter. That's none of her business. This is irritating me to no end. I don't know why this is um but anyway, so then all of a sudden David shows up. Now David came into town that day, and after the funeral, they were going to talk in Joel's apartment about this sudden thing that they found in the pictures and everything. And so now we see Catherine come in. Okay, the funeral's over, and as it says, it was over. Her husband was laid to rest. She would be without him forever. Now she had to deal. That doesn't make sense. Now she had to deal with the pain of Spot as well as the pain of seeing Enrique less. What does that mean? 22-year-old me makes no fucking sense. Okay, because that could have been an okay if what it should have said is now she had to deal with the pain of not having her beloved by her side, something like that. A little sappy, but it makes sense. I mean that would make more sense. Why is it bringing up Spot and Enrique at this moment in time? I am frustrated. Okay, so now Spot wants to talk to her, and he basically proposes to her, and she slaps him across the face for good reason. Why didn't she do that to Enrique earlier? Remember when Enrique practically proposed? Why? Instead, she just kicked him out of her cabin, and this woman makes no sense. I'm so glad that that she got a rewrite in her personality, and that's what I was trying to say earlier, not facelift, that he got a massive rewrite in that Jackal got a massive rewrite in his personality and like a backstory. He got an actual backstory and everything. Yeah, not facelift, rewrite. Words don't come to me, and I so now she runs out of the room and she goes into her room, and she throws herself on the bed. Think of in Beauty and the Beast, where she finds out that she's going to be a prisoner there, and um she basically throws herself on the bed and just starts crying, and then it pans out and you see it starts snowing and everything. Yeah, it's basically that. Okay, so oh, so she slapped him twice for that. Why did she slap him twice? Weird. Okay, so anyway, so then somebody says something to her. Okay, This is gonna make you cringe inside and out, and then just back inside and back out again. Because this is just the dumbest thing I have ever read in all my life. So she's in her room, bawling her eyes out because, Spot was being a dumbass. And so then somebody says, what can make a beautiful woman like you cry? Okay. So she looks up and she looks around, and it turns out that Enrique is standing next to a window. Now, is her room on the second floor? It sounds like her room is on the second floor of this mansion, which mansions, like I said, weren't that big. Usually they were just, you were lucky if you had a third story on these houses. And so, yeah, she's on the second floor. He doesn't even know what room is hers. He knows what room is Ian's because he was there and the day before, but which room is hers? I don't believe that she would just give that information away because that's not proper. You don't say stuff like that. And this is so stupid. How did he get up there? I'm sure that Spot has like a ton of staff, like a gardener and all that stuff. So how is it that Enrique just came in undetected, like was climbing up the side of the house and nobody saw it? Plus, you have to consider that back then there were police officers that would walk around on duty all the time. Yeah, up and down the streets. There's no way that he could have climbed up into her room. It's- How was he able to open the window? How did he know that it was unlocked? I'm 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 having frustrations here. This is so stupid. This is like oh, and wasn't he supposed to go with David and Joel to talk about the the photographs? Why is he here? Okay, so now they're embracing and she's like, "Oh, you wouldn't believe what he said to me," and all this nonsense. And so suddenly there's a knock at the door before the two could react. Spot opened the door. He'd come to apologize, make things right with her. But now his eyes went wide and he said, "What the hell is going on here?" Yes, get him. Get him, Spot. Okay, now we're on chapter 17. Just kill him. I don't care anymore. Oh my gosh. Intruder in your house. It's just why? Why is it just seriously, I at this point I think that Spot Conlon is like this gangster boss kind of a guy. I think he grew up to be Al Capone. That's what it is. Just destroy them both. Oh man. I hate this. I hate this so much. Oh man. I don't know. This must have been when they injected me full of that dye. No. See, because when you go in for MRIs and CAT scans and everything, and they have to inject you with a dye so that uh, your insides can be read on their computers or whatever. I remember one time coming home and I was acting so weird that I mean, I was having like the weirdest reaction to this dye that they injected me with that my mom and my dad said, "Go lay down and sleep this thing off because we're done with your antics." I swear that's what this is. That has to be what, oh my gosh, because this is dumb. There's no logic here. No damn logic. Uh, that's my excuse. That's it's gotta be what it is. Okay. Okay, so now oh, Spot's fuming. He's mad. Kill him. Kill them both. So yeah, now Catherine's trying to throw her weight around, and she says, isn't it customary to wait for a person to answer her own door? And wow, that's a good one. And he answers, "This is my house. Yes, get him. Get them both." And well, who's to say I wasn't changing? You need to respect me more. Oh, are you for serious? Respect you. I come in here to find you in the arms of this man who I'd still like to know how he got in here. This is like the best exchange in the whole thing so far. Kill them. Bring Jackal in here and just kill him. Just do it. It just oh my gosh. Oh. Oh, now Enrique's getting it. She's been through enough. Quit yelling at her. Oh. Wow, he's tough. Oh, how did you get in here? You're lucky I don't call the police right now. Yeah, no kidding. You're the intruder, you dumbass. Oh man. Oh, they're okay. Yeah, it's going off the rails. It was solid and then it just goes off the rails, so. But anyway, so now uh Enrique is basically got them kicked out of the house. Nice going. Which they deserve that. Point for Spot. I would have kicked him out too. What the hell? I think that's the smartest thing in this whole thing. Okay, so now what's gonna happen? Okay, so you remember the neighbor, Mrs. Robinson. I think her name is Mary. Yeah, it says right there, Mary. The next door neighbor is sitting uh with Molly Brown, and basically they have decided that Catherine and Ian will stay with Mary, excuse me, for a while until Catherine can figure out what to do. Which again, what is she going to do? What is her income? What's going to happen? Because every time people bring it up, she starts crying or she changes the subject. So, uh, yeah. And then it changes over. So David and Joel, and I guess Enrique's with him too, are talking to this sergeant at the police station and trying to get him to open up the case of Peter. And he's standing his ground. He's like, no, there's no reason to open the case up again. Um, it's over. It's done. All over. Uh, and basically how it turns out is they show him the photo and then like point at something on the photo and he's like, "Oh my gosh, didn't see that before." Like that's it's like the most ridiculous thing ever. That's not gonna happen. And yeah, some miracle. It's so now we're on chapter 18 and now Catherine is in uh the real estate office. One of Peter's friends who used to be a newsie is working in real estate now. I think this was Pie Eater. And now he's which oh, so the actor who played Pie Eater is now in real estate. So that's funny to me. Oh, that's hilarious. So anyway, yeah, she's trying to figure out what to do and everything. Which this isn't explained. Why can't she live in the house that she lived in before? What happened to the house? Does she live in a house? Does she live in an apartment? What's again, there's so many questions with this. So yeah. And a bunch of word vomit. Yeah, basically he's asking her about the whole thing with Enrique and then with Spot and all that. And even more word vomit. And then you see Enrique with Heather in the apartment, and then there's a knock at the door. And this character, okay, so on the mailing list, we would do what was called a casting call. And there were a lot of times where we would be writing a story and then we would need a character. And so we would do these casting calls, basically auditions for characters that we have. So, for instance, like for Jackal or Catherine or, whatever, these characters that we made up could be. And so this character, Rebecca, was one that somebody answered the casting call and seemed to work for. And for this particular, I removed this character. Because at the end of the day, it didn't add any substance to the the novel or anything. I guess it worked for this particular, but it seems like there's another character that I did a casting. I didn't do very many casting calls, not that I remember anyway. I may have done quite a few, but I answered quite a few. And but yeah, I mean, and I always remember the casting call. You had to fill out this whole thing where it was like when you put out a casting call, it was like the title of the story, the genre of the story. So like, is it action or romance or whatever? And you had to put the rating. So did you want your character to be in a PG-13 rating or anything like that? Because there were some people that wanted their character to stay in a particular uh, and uh and then you had to explain your character's personality traits. Is there a backstory for the character? And yeah, there were basically the stuff about the character and all that, and any other extra tidbits that we needed to know about the character. And but and I know that there were at least three people that would try to hide the whole thing about the genre, and it didn't work. Because then they would start actually releasing the story, and it's like, excuse me, that's not what you said the story was about. Okay, so we have this character, Rebecca, and she comes in, and basically she is somebody who works for Molly Brown, who was basically helping uh, um, Catherine move into the apartment, into Mary's apartment. And she was kind of a love interest for Joel, but I was hoping to do more with that, but it just didn't turn out that way. And I think the person that had Rebecca, the who Rebecca belonged to, was upset with me about that. And I was like, I'm sorry, but the story went a different way. I didn't, that's just how life goes. So yeah, Joel and Rebecca meet up and everything. And then Joel is asking Enrique about where he stands with Catherine. And basically Enrique says it's really complicated right now, you know. And so chapter 19, we are so close to the end. Thank goodness. Uh this is the point where it's where the trials, the inquiries, that's the word I'm looking for. The inquiries start to show up. And again, the um the timeline is wrong. Because I gotta tell you something, especially with the American inquiries, they started like as soon as Carpathia uh arrived. They were they removed Senator Smith removed Bruce Ismay from the ship, uh, fighting tooth and nail. I mean, and the thing about it is that the survivors were interrogated at that hotel. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. They were interrogated at the hotel, and then they had to go to Washington, D.C. And there were pictures of the crew standing in front of the Capitol building. And I mean, it was just, oh gosh. So it was, and then they had to go over to the British inquiry. And that was annoying because I back and forth. It was like some of the survivors had to be there, n not all of them, and then other places were saying that all of them had to be there. So it was like, make up your mind. Is it all? Oh, good grief. Okay, so this whole thing here is inaccurate, as inaccurate can be. Um, but it does establish that Enrique has a home in New York. He has decided to establish himself in New York. He has his own home. Um, and somewhere along the lines, Rebecca started working for him. So I don't know how that worked, but yeah, she babysits Heather, and which I guess works. But the thing is that apparently, right after Catherine and Ian were moved into Mary's apartment, there was an intruder that tried to kidnap Catherine. And so there was another plan put into place, and they've hidden her. So, and of course, Spot is going ballistic. And now we see David, he's sitting in his hotel room and he's going over his notes and he's looking at every picture. Again, where are the articles? Because this is, he's going over his notes and he's going over every picture, uh, all the witness statements and all of that. But what about the articles? Because there was where when Enrique and Joel uh spent that entire night looking over, it was he looked at articles and pictures. Where are those articles? I'm upset because he said he was a journalist. Okay. So Adam comes by and he says, have you found out anything on Peter's death? And he says, no. And he says, rumors are going around that Spot is going out of his mind because he can't find Catherine. We can't keep her hidden much longer. You remember how he gets when he gets too angry. Um, what does this have to do with anything? Because then there's a knock at the door. David answers the door, and it's the sergeant. And he says, we've got something big. And then it just goes to the next chapter. What? You're not going to elaborate on that at all. You're just going, I hate when this does this. Okay. Okay. Like the lack of descriptive writing is terrible. Absolutely terrible. I can't believe that people on the mailing list bothered to read any of my stuff because this is shit. Oh man. And I'm sure I've said it before and I will say it over and over again. I'm sure that there were people that were trying really hard to tell me that my stuff sucked, that my writing sucked and I needed to improve on it, and I just didn't listen because I'm stubborn that way. Oh man. Okay, so Catherine is hiding. She and her son are like in a secret room in the attic. Now, at first, when I read this, I was like, well, that's unrealistic. And then I thought, well, wait a minute. Not really, because of the because of the Underground Railroad, but also I was watching a documentary and for the life of me, I couldn't find it. If you know what I'm talking about, because over in the UK, this was like way back in the Middle Ages. Uh, there was uh this. event that happened where monks were in hiding. And so they had these secret rooms, secret little areas. And so they were showing in this documentary these secret areas. So, like behind stairs, they had these little rooms where monks would stay. And they're like tiny little rooms, like about as tiny as where I'm at right now. Like the wall is right here. Okay. And like the door is right here. Possibly even tinier than this. And, and so I'll try to find it and put it in the description box. But yeah, I mean, in um over in Europe, they had this event where the monks had to hide. I'm pretty sure it was my, again, I'll look for it. I remember watching this and I for the life of me can't remember exactly what was going on, but I remember seeing these rooms and everything. And you could of course correct me. I have no problem with that. And so, but here in the US, of course, we had the Underground Railroad. So to have Catherine and Ian hiding in a secret room is not far-fetched. Because at first I was reading it and I was like, this is, no, that's not. And then once I got to thinking about it, and especially when, that whole thing with the over in Europe, with the event over in Europe in the Middle Ages, I was like, well, now, yeah, it could happen. Um, so, but so this little thing is realistic. 'Cause Adam, the real estate agent, is probably middle class. And so even with middle class houses, they had, yeah. And so, but anyway, so Catherine's going out of her mind, and she decides that she's gonna go out. She's had it. She can't take it anymore. She's leaving. And that's when she meets Enrique. And Enrique and Heather have been out for the day. And while they're talking, all of a sudden Jackal shows up. And of course, Jackal is scaring the living daylights out of little Heather. And Heather is holding on tightly to Catherine because Catherine was holding on to Heather and everything. Well, then they go, um, and then they leave. You know, Enrique pushes her away from the situation. And Adam is talking to Ian, trying to lift his spirits, and Ian is just Ian's a 7-year-old boy. Ian wants to go out and play, and he can't do that because of what's going on, and I get it. And so when he comes down and he starts talking to his wife, and his wife is upset because of everything that's going. His wife is a very moral woman. She doesn't like everything that's going on. And because she doesn't like Spot's lifestyle, and she didn't like that Catherine agreed to stay with Spot and and everything. Well, then next thing you know, in walks Enrique and Catherine, and Enrique says, "You know what? I don't care anymore. Catherine and Ian are going to come with me. And and of course Adam's wife is going into hysterics until she sees just how unhappy Catherine is, and then finally says, "You know what? Screw it. Yeah, they're going. They're leaving." And so now we're on the final chapter. Uh, and we see Rebecca and Joel, and Rebecca is actually sewing, and she's getting kind of irritated with Joel because it's like Joel is so absorbed in the whole investigation and he doesn't really pay attention to her. And then it's like when she actually uh gets annoyed with him and actually says something to him about it, he's like, why are you mad at me? What did I do? And and in fact, at one point he asks her if she's gonna go to Enrique's place and if she could drop something off, and she's like, I'm not your messenger. And everything. So yeah, they're having a fight and she leaves and he he's like, whatever. I've had it and I don't want to deal with it. Well, then he looks out the window of his apartment and sees Spot like grabbing and shaking her and everything, and so he runs down to help her. And he's this is another one of those moments where it's like, this is happening on the street. Why isn't anyone else helping? That happened in the other st I mean, it happened several times in that last uh story. And it was just like nobody did anything. Okay, so much sense. Anyway, so uh he I'm actually surprised with the because in this Spot calls her a bitch. And I didn't think that I used that kind of language in my fiction that early on. And kind of surprising. But so then there's an altercation between Joel and Spot, and Spot runs off after being sucker punched. And then it's like, again, the frustration is off the charts because so Rebecca and Joel go to talk to the sergeant, and so they're trying to figure out what's going on. And so then Rebecca all of a sudden talks about how, oh yeah, I worked for Spot for a while, and he would just run his mouth because we didn't exist, the staff didn't exist. And and there was at one point where David says, okay, so he doesn't know where Enrique lives. So I don't believe that because all aristocrats do is talk. Like, that has never changed. I mean, when there's a new aristocrat that comes into town, they're gonna know. Okay, and I'm sure that he's part of like the country club and all of this stuff and that and the other. So he's gonna know where he when if he goes to wherever it is, be it a lunch, dinner, or whatever, and they're, well, have you heard about this new guy that's living in Manhattan or wherever it is? Yeah, he's gonna know. He's gonna have Jackal go look into where exactly it is that he lives. Don't tell me that he doesn't know where Enrique lives. Oh my gosh. Yeah, because they were trying to figure out if he knows about Catherine's whereabouts. It's, it's ridiculous. Okay, so yeah, if you want something to pin on him, I worked in the mansion for months before he fired me. Ugh, yeah, don't care. Yeah, that doesn't, I don't know why I wrote that in. That didn't make sense to anything. Okay, so she was trying to find anything that could put Spot behind bars. Her eyes suddenly went wide and she said, Europe. And yeah, what? Uh, her trip to Europe for Ian. Spot never paid for anything in his life, and suddenly he offers to pay for the trip. What better way to show you love than to have that? Okay, but if her husband, if Peter worked for the newspaper firm, then they can pay for the trip. Why is Spot paying for anything for them? Especially if it sounds like he doesn't like her husband. Why doesn't he like her? Okay. This doesn't make any sense. It was all starting to unravel. No, it's not. You didn't say anything. So just because he paid for her trip to Europe, her and Ian's trip to Europe, that means that he's a murderer? So that he could kill Peter? That doesn't make any sense. Okay. This is, I hope you're as frustrated as I am because, oh my gosh. Yeah, it was pretty predictable, wasn't it? I mean, as soon as Enrique was sitting on the deck of the Titanic thinking, did he do it? Yeah, you pretty much knew where it was going, right? Yeah. hmm This is the dumbest thing I've ever read. Not really, because the last one was really bad, wasn't it? Okay, so Catherine is reading a bedtime story to Heather. Heather fell asleep. And then Enrique uh, takes her into the study to talk to her and says that they brought in the man that killed her husband and he confessed and says that it was Spot. And then it just gets super sappy and I just don't care. Don't care anymore. Like, okay, so the only time that there was any good writing was when Spot walked in to that ridiculous moment when Enrique is standing in her room at the Spot mansion. Which what does Spot do? Yeah. And he comes in and he's like, "What the hell?" That was the only time that it was actually, I mean, they're trying to save their butts and he's letting them know, no. Uh-uh. Yeah, it was pretty predictable. I mean, as soon as uh Enrique was going off of what a 7-year-old said, you pretty much knew where it was going. Yeah. And I mean, trust me, this does not spoil anything. It really doesn't. Even the few pieces that I talked about, like the one where in this there was the kiss on the deck, and then I changed it around to where he's um feels a strong attraction to her. It doesn't change, it doesn't hurt anything. You got to read the rest of the story and find out what happens. And no, I did read this a couple of times and like does me going through this actually hurt the story? Hurt the actual book? Because the last thing I want to do is just because I hate when people do that. No, it really really does not. The only thing that this has that's the same as the book is that Enrique, Catherine, and Ian were on the Titanic. They got off the Titanic, and then there was an investigation for Peter's murder. That's it. That's the only thing. Um, but the characters were changed. Okay, so Spot was changed. It's Connor. Connor doesn't is not anything like. In fact, Connor is one of my favorites, but nothing like. Look, Jackal is a favorite. Okay, Jackal is my number one favorite original character. Connor is my second favorite. But Catherine is a special favorite because she was the first one, like I said before, she was the first one that was a mom. And it turned out that she was the first one that was not only a mom, but turned into a single mom. And that was just too much at the time that I wrote her, and I didn't know what I was doing. Well, when I rewrote her, now she's a stronger character, and that's what happened with all the other ones. So like Enrique and Connor and everything else. Yeah. See, this is the thing is that yeah, this was originally fan fiction for Newsies. You're not going to get that with this. Not at all. I made sure of that. I was just not going to do that. So anyway, there was a lot of word vomit. Yes, there was. And so just like in the last one, apparently younger me enjoyed doing that. Fortunately, older me has learned from that. So anyway, close up here.